Hey there, creatives. I'm really excited to bring another mini season of the Expressive Therapy Summit special season. We kind of got a late start in coordinating this time, so we only have a couple folks that will be airing special episodes, and this is going to be the first in 2023. And I think you're really gonna love this conversation. I had the good fortune of speaking with Patricia Jauchler, and she is a registered drama therapist, plus has a whole suite of certifications that focus on end of life issues from the start of kind of the death experience, dying experience, all the way through to after into bereavement and family support. And we talk all about that. She shares how she so thoughtfully designed her practice. I really admire how what she has done, and she shares a lot about myths of of death and how we don't need to fear it, and how she helps people with an artful practice and creating rituals that are just rich with meaning um, throughout this season of life. And she's going to be teaching at the upcoming Expressive Therapy Summit on artful dying. And so it's going to be chock full with experientials. And if you're interested in that, you should definitely check out the summit webpage, uh, www.expressivetherapiessummit.com. She's going to be teaching on March 26th, and you'd be able to find it in the menu if you just put in Artful Dying in the schedule, and her session will come up. But also have a link in the show notes if you want to just grab it there. So without further ado, here's the episode.
The Creative Psychotherapist is the official podcast of the Creative Clinicians Corner, a practice building resource for creative psychotherapists. TCP Podcast is the cast for creative, expressive, and experiential focused psychotherapists curious to learn how to design, build, and scale a thriving private practice. Your host, Raina Lombardi, interviews successful therapists about the tools and strategies they have used to develop creative, focused practices. They also talk about the products, services, and side hustles they have developed using their knowledge and creativity to enhance their therapy practices, make a greater impact in their communities, and diversify their income streams. Welcome. Now here's your host, Raina Lombardi.
Thanks so much for listening to the Creative Psychotherapist Podcast. I am your host, Rena Lombardi, and I'm really excited to bring out to the world another special series on the Expressive Therapy Summit. And today I'm going to be speaking with Patricia Jauchler, and she is a registered drama therapist and board certified trainer. She's the founder and director of On Bright Wings End of Life Services. She works with the aging, dying, and bereaved, and holds certifications as a certified thanatologist, end of life doula, certified dementia practitioner, grief support specialist, and advanced planning facilitator. In addition to using drama therapy and other creative arts in her practice with the aging and dying and their families, she created Theater on the Threshold to educate the community about aging, dying, and grieving issues through short play performances, followed by discussions and workshops. Her aim is to encourage conversations and reduce stigma about those most feared topics in order to live more meaningful lives and die more peaceful deaths. Oh my gosh, I love that. So cool. Thank you for being here, Patricia.
It's my pleasure.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit. I feel like this work is something that uh, you have to be called to. It's very deep, meaningful work that you do with clients. What kind of pulled you in this direction to really specialize in all of these areas of end of life issues? You can tell in all of the certifications that you hold that you can really hold space for kind of the whole family in any part of this process.
Mm. Yes, I began this journey in 2013. I happened to be present the weekend of my uncle's death, and just intuitively did many of the things that I do with my dying clients now. Uh, Played music, got a playlist of his favorite songs to play to him. I read to him, read poetry, uh, talked to him about his life, and did some reminiscence and remembrances. And his dying process, the actual moment of his death, was perhaps the most spiritual experience I have ever had. It was so peaceful and so natural and so profound.
Mm.
And I will say he was on hospice. So I think that made a big difference. And being able to hold space for not only for him, but for his wife, my aunt, and another aunt who was there was just, it just felt so natural to me to do that. And then I was working in on a psychiatric unit at the time, and had just a huge burnout, and was looking for, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And came across an interview with a woman who became my trainer and my mentor, who happened to be in LA, who happened to be having a training. It's just like these things just fell into place. And I said, this is it. Remembering my uncle's experience and how meaningful it was to me, I thought to myself, this is what I want to do. And of course, adapting what I already do as far as creative arts therapies with the dying and the grieving and the aging populations has been a real journey, and really an adventure. Really, it's been so fun to think, oh well, here's where drama therapy can come into play, because obviously a dying person is not going to get up and do a monologue.
Right.
So finding those quiet ways of using my skills, along with my training at end of life, has been really fun.
Mm, that sounds very rich and very rewarding.
Mm,
Um, yeah.
yes, very much so. Yeah.
So it also sounds like your your developing your private practice was very intentional to focus on this particular group of people, or this particular life experience, time of life. Um, what went into your thought process as you were developing your practice, living in an area like, Southern California, where maybe it's not looked at as like a retirement community, like where I'm at in Florida? I feel like that could easily fill very quickly because that's by and large, the community around me are all folks that are older. What went into your thought process of, okay, I'm going to create this practice, but how am I going to get clients to use my services?
That is an excellent question. I I like to follow a client from the start of their journey towards death uh, to the end and beyond. And by beyond, I mean,
With
the grieving
family?
process, as well as preparations, body preparations, and rituals such as home funerals and things like that. So most of my end of life doula training had to do with the dying process, that actual moment where you just come in and help the family through that event. Um, I love the relationship that develops. And so I thought, well, dying is one aspect of that relationship, but a person, either through terminal illness or through the aging process, is nearing that. So I wanted to learn about that part as well. And that's why the certifications as a dementia practitioner and the aging work I've done. And then on the other side, the grieving process, which is so important throughout, because there's losses that happen throughout the dying process, through the,
Right.
even in aging, how it's a process of letting go and letting go and letting go. And with each of those letting goes, there is a loss and there are feelings around those losses. And so carrying them through to the very end became really important to me, because you have a relationship with the family on beyond death. And so to be there for them and give them what they need became also really important to me. So
Mhm.
that's where I really did a lot of thinking about exactly how I want to use this training I did.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't want to just go in and help them through the death and then say, see you later. And I
Yeah.
wanted it to be an ongoing process.
I think it's such a beautiful illustration of thinking about an ecological approach to client care, right? That the client is at the center, but you're also considering all of the other pieces in their orbit, right? All their family members, what's going on in their community, right? In terms of the funeral services, everything. All in one package, which is really beautiful.
Mm. Yes, yes. And advanced planning comes in there too, because uh, part of what I do is not only what you want done medically, but also how you want to be treated during the dying process. Do you want prayers? Do you want people to cry, or do you want them to put on a happy face around you? Do you want them to be positive? You want them, all of those, and into funeral services. And some of the workshops I do, we talk about writing your own eulogy, for example, and what kind of funeral playlist do you want? What do you want played while you're dying? Um, I have I have my own dying playlist that keeps growing as I go along and go, oh yeah, I want to hear that. And so my death's going to take a really long time so that I can listen to all of this wonderful music that I've got on my playlist. But those are the kinds of things that we can plan for. And also, I think it helps remind us that we're mortal
Mm-hmm.
and that we're not going to live forever. And
Yeah.
therefore, carpe diem, and, really relish these moments that we have in this finite life.
Yeah. No, that is a beautiful thing. I think
Mm,
that then when you lose someone very, very close to you, it does change your perception of the importance of the time that you have left here and how you want to live your life, where you want to invest your time and energy. And that doesn't have to be, obviously loss is painful when you lose a loved one, but there can also be these really beautiful um, growth that occurs.
yes.
Mhm.
In my experience, the deepest grief issues, not the grieving process, but the issues that happen that prolongs the grief and makes it so painful, comes from the denial of death, the denial of the experience. Everyone grieves in their own way, but I think the more the family can be involved in that process of really speaking the words they need to say to the person who's dying, um, resolve the issues
Mhm.
surrounding um, the life they've lived with this person. Um, Ira Byock, who is a hospice doctor and uh, an educator, has written a book on the things that matter most at the end of life. And the the questions to answer, and where I always start with families and with clients, is these questions, which are: I love you, thank you,
Mhm.
uh, I forgive you, and
Mhm.
please forgive me. And writing letters along those lines to give to loved ones, or to even involve the loved ones in that process of dialoguing
Mhm.
those those questions and answers, can really help with that grieving process, when you know that all that needs to be said has been said, and you can
Yes.
have that peace and comfort within yourself.
So true. So true. Um, I'm starting to get a little teary just like thinking about it. In 2019, my mom passed, and she was in hospice care, and she had cancer, and I spent a lot of time with her in like the 6 months leading up to her passing, and I'm grateful for that time. But we had those conversations, and so like hearing you say that, and to know like that was so important in my grieving process, to have had those very deep, rich conversations with her while she was still able to. Um, and it does, it means so much.
Oh, yes. Thank you for sharing that. How beautiful. And you knew that was just your intuitive
Hmm.
process of being able to be present there with her, and speak of those things.
Hmm.
How beautiful for both of you.
Yeah, I think it was important for her too.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yes. Yes. I will share, my father also died during this COVID pandemic experience. And he was in assisted living, or he'd gone into skilled nursing by the time he died. But because of the nature of the world surroundings, everybody was locked out. And I was just so lucky that because of my training, they felt they could let me in as a caregiver. And so I was able to be with
Wow.
him, and uh, through the last 2 weeks of his life, help him in many different ways, play his favorite songs and etc. But my brothers and sisters were not as fortunate. My two sisters eventually got in, but my brothers never saw him.
Ugh.
But what we did, and this is where ritual becomes so important in the healing process, is after he died, then they felt like, it was okay for the brothers to come in. So we all gathered with him within an hour of his death.
Mhm.
And we prayed, we all surrounded his bed, and then we dressed him. We took off that old hospital gown, and me and my sister washed his body. I brought some oils, so it was real fragrant and nice. And my brother combed his hair, and another brother shaved him, and we dressed him in some of his favorite clothes, real bright clothes. And there he was. And we all sat around and told stories and laughed and cried.
Mhm.
And basically, that is a home funeral. And that's what we did for him. And it was probably the most meaningful way that we could all, first of all, be close together and
Yeah.
still be with my dad
Mhm.
throughout that process. And it just went a long way towards, really moving people along through their grief.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful process. I was imagining, what that would look like and going through that. We didn't do that part, but we definitely sat we sat with her, and, held her hand and,
Ah,
you know,
wonderful.
all the things, told stories and talked and everything, but we didn't dress her, um,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe until the end, maybe we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it was an important part too of
Yes,
being there.
in community. And that's what I think people forget, that death is not a medical event.
No.
Never. It's a community event. And if you can gather your community, whether it's your family, whether it's special loved ones, friends, um, clergy people, whoever is part of your community, if you can gather that, that is the beauty of death, that it happens in a communal atmosphere where everyone is connected, even the dying, the living, everyone. And it builds an even closer connection
Mhm.
through the experience.
Oh, definitely. Definitely to have it. I feel like I lost my father too, years before. He was in hospice at the VA hospital, and I saw him probably 2 days before he passed. I kind of knew when I was leaving that was going to be the last time I saw him. But so I didn't get to be there in the moment, but I got to be there in the
Mm,
moment,
yes.
and it's profound. It changes you, in ways that are really undescribable, to to be in that process, but to share that with family members too, it definitely tightens the bonds that you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And isn't that what it's all about when it comes to living? It's the connectedness that we
Hmm.
have with each other. I mean, that's the beauty of life.
Yeah.
And to be able to experience that
Hmm.
in death as well is just a wonderful send off.
Yes. And I that was like one of the things that I thought too was I'm sure that that meant so much for her to be in her home, surrounded by people that love her, holding her hand through the
Oh,
process.
yes. Yes, absolutely. It's, I think fear of dying, as a person is actually going through the dying process, there's no fear there. I mean, they are working to get out of their body. The fear
Hmm.
comes from all of us
Right.
around, our inability to let go and um, be present with the process, which is nature.
Yeah.
There is a reason, it's
Yeah.
natural. Natural nature.
So speaking of our inhibition to talk about this and our fear of talking about this, our fear of dealing with death. I mean, and I know for some people, they don't even want to talk about it with to their children.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it makes me think, oh my goodness, you have a really challenging job to do in marketing the service that you're providing. How do you go about doing that?
You are absolutely right. No, everyone says, be gone when I start talking about my work. Or they go, oh, that's really fascinating. Oh, I could never do that. So
Hmm.
I get both of those responses. And what they don't know is that, oh, they are really missing out and depriving themselves of so much if they do not involve themselves in their loved ones' care and dying process.
Hmm.
Um, so how I have done it marketing wise is first of all, I have a website, and I would say much of my business comes from my website.
Mm.
So having a good website and really spending the money to have someone professional do that website is really important.
Yeah.
Um, and you can do a lot of listing of services at within that so that you don't have to keep saying it. But the other thing I do as far as marketing is concerned is before the pandemic, a lot of stuff has stopped throughout this experience. But before the pandemic, I would hold monthly death cafes, which, believe it or not, is a thing. You sit around and, like in a cafe atmosphere, everyone's sipping coffee and tea, and it makes it very pleasant. And you talk about your thoughts as they relate to death and dying, and to just start getting people to talk about being mortal and talk about their fears and talk about their experiences. And that becomes a base of, of potential clients, but also a service to the community. I would
Yeah.
have a death goes to the movies night where I would choose a movie or a documentary, and there's plenty out there that deal with death and dying. And again, watch the movie and then have a discussion afterwards. What came up for you? What questions do you have? What feelings? Um, so, so that was important. Presentations, speaking at conferences, going to the professionals who also deal with dying, palliative care doctors, hospices, saying, I can do an in-service for you, and I'd be happy to do this, and here's my card. If you need my services, here's how I can support your work and be part of your team. So those are all ways to go about it. I haven't actually done this yet, but I also wanted to go into high schools and talk to kids in high school about death and dying, because death and dying is not reserved for the elderly.
No, it's not.
Everyone is going to have a connection and an experience with death at some point in their lives. I volunteered for a children's grief camp, so talking to children and helping them with their feelings. And I have to say that as far as grieving goes, so many of these kids talked about how the parents wanted to protect them and didn't tell them that somebody was dying, or tried to keep them from the funeral.
Mhm.
And I just had a client just this week who was the same way. And I said, be truthful with your son, who is 12 years old and certainly old enough. And
Yes.
be truthful and let him see your feelings. You're teaching him how to grieve through the way you are doing it. And give him a
Yeah.
choice of whether to be part of the visitation and the viewing or not. Let him decide. Don't try to protect him from something.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think, different cultures have different vantage points about grief and all the
Mhm.
rituals that go into it. I feel really fortunate in the family of origin that I have, that like it was very traditional Italian Catholic, and there's extensive rituals that go into grief.
So important, those rituals.
Yes, and like the time, like the time that you took for the viewing, and all of the things. Now, as elders have passed on, those rituals have changed, but as a small person, as a young person, it it was helpful to
Mhm.
be able to experience that and understand it, and to grieve in community,
Mhm.
right? We
Yes. And I will say, especially with young ones, and it sounds like your experiences did all the things, but being aware of our language is so important. you know
Yeah,
um some people say, oh, it looks like she's sleeping. Well, you say that to a child and they start being really scared to go to sleep, because they look like they're going to die.
right,
Or she passed, or god god needed her or him, which leaves the child going, well, I needed them too. And
hmm,
I what does that mean, passed? Did she go across the street? She passed
right.
by. So using the word she died, avoiding the euphemisms is so important as well, with with children, especially because children have a lot of magical thinking involved with, and
Yeah,
everything they've seen, cartoons, video games. People die and get killed and they're up and doing
right.
things again. I mean, so being really careful with our language is so important as well.
That
And
makes so much sense.
yeah, and the rituals are so necessary. uh, whether they be funeral rituals, the Catholic, last rites, and the visitations, and the
Hmm.
rosaries, and everything is all part of that process of, you know, community and healing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that stands out for me, and it's no surprise that I ended up um, becoming an expressive arts therapist, is that that's also part of it. That was modeled to me. The using the arts, using poetry and music, and um, to further process.
Yes.
And yeah.
Well, I'll share, as an art therapist, you'll appreciate this. The cremation caskets are cardboard, and we paint them with a white so that, it's a blank canvas, and let people write on the actual casket, draw. And there's been just some beautiful artwork that people have created on these cremation coffins, and that goes with them. This is part of the process of, you know saying what you need to say.
Hmm. That's so beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So what are some myths you think people have about working with this with death, working with people around death, um, that
That
you've
it's really
encountered?
sad and dreary, and messy, and perhaps even dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
because dead bodies have disease, which, if a person dies of a contagious disease, of course the body is contagious, but other than that, it is not. and
Mm-hmm.
it and that somehow seeing my loved one dead is going to be so traumatic, um, that I'll never be able to erase that from my mind, and that's all I'll remember of that person. Um, Another, I think, is that a body has to be embalmed, that it is necessary, when it's absolutely not. I think within all 50 states, there is no laws. And I'm saying I think, because I know in most states it's not, but it has become customary. It has become the way to keep bodies from being dangerous and diseased. Um, but in actuality, it actually alters a person's appearance, a loved
Yeah.
one's appearance. It also, all those chemicals, if
Mm-hmm.
you are environmentally um, sensitive, it is so bad for the environment, to have all those chemicals put in the earth. In fact, they have to protect the earth by actually putting the coffin into a cement vault to keep the chemicals from leaching into the soil, because they are so dangerous. So embalming is not necessary, especially
Wow.
in our culture where we have refrigeration, we have the ability to bury someone reasonably quickly. And even if they're not, I just this week again had a client who had been refrigerated unembalmed for 3 weeks, and she was fine.
Hmm.
And it's not an issue. um And especially if you're going to be cremated, you certainly don't need to be embalmed. And
No.
that's really an extra cost that is, they shouldn't be charging that
Oh
if
gosh.
you're going to be cremated. So yes, many myths, all making death very, very scary, and the body very, very scary in how it looks, how it you know how dangerous it is for the living, none of which is true. And that is one of the things that we as death educators, I as a death educator, do want to put out into the community, that there, it is natural, and nature does not make things dangerous for us when there is a process like this,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that. It's something that I never would have even thought about, pertaining to the embalming. It not just, I think it's so far removed from what I do on a day-to-day
Mm-hmm.
basis. But
Yes.
hearing you talk about it, I thought, wow, well, yeah, that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Why would we
Um,
be doing that?
Now, many funeral homes will say it's our policy to embalm every body. Um, and I say to that, find another funeral home. Don't stand for that. If it is important to you to
Hmm.
see your loved one as they are,
Yeah.
um, then, and also if the environment is important, if that is a factor for you, you don't want to be putting those chemicals into your loved one. And just the
No.
process of embalming is kind of horrifying, when you think about it and what they are actually doing to the body of this person who's so dear to you.
Hmm.
It's not a pleasant process.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't sound like it, and I have no plans for that for myself. I
Yes, write it down. That's in your advance directive. If you don't write it down, it won't happen.
right, subject to whoever's
Yeah,
dealing with.
yeah, and what their sensibilities are, they're going to make the decision that is best for them, because they don't know what you would want.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
no, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
And it's something that I think none of us really want to think about. Right? Like
Hmm.
putting a will and testament together, and
Right.
that includes all of those things.
Hmm.
But as private practitioners, I know this is like a total tangent, but as private practitioners, we're supposed to have a business will, that if something happens to us, that there's proper procedures and protocols in place for somebody to close out our business, to take care of our clients and getting them new people. And that was actually what kind of forced me into doing my own personal will. When I opened my practice, I thought, well, if I'm doing that, I might as well do my own personal stuff at the same time. I'm paying the lawyer, might as well have it all in one swoop.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Mhm. I will say there's an added bonus to doing that too. It The more you think about your own death in these ways, the more precious your life is. And so it helps you live more fully. In fact,
Yeah.
that's the motto of On Bright Wings, is live fully and die well. And I think a life well lived uh, leads to a death that is accepting and able to let go,
Mm,
because you've really savored the essence of being on the planet and what that means to be human.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, I mean that's all of our goals, right? And aspirations really is like, what this is what I want to feel, this is what I want to experience in this life. But we often make so many reasons not to do those things, or like
Oh, yeah.
convince ourselves that it's not possible. But it seems like that's just should be our like most important life's work, is living a really well fulfilled, meaningful life.
Yes, indeed. That's what it's all about. And death is just the end of a life well lived. So it's about living till the end, really.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So, in your presentation at the summit in March,
Hmm.
you're going to be teaching on artful dying. What kinds of things are you going to be talking about in your presentation?
Well, we are going to be talking about much of the same things that we've been talking about now.
Okay.
But what I really want to do is to show how creative arts therapies can be used in this context with death, dying, and bereavement. And so with that, I'm going to be doing lots of experiential exercises and activities on how to go about some of these um, uh, issues and processes, such as those 4 questions to ask of Dr. Biox, and how to use the creative arts to really state in meaningful ways, I love you.
Mm.
Thank you. Forgive me.
Mm-hmm.
Please, I forgive you. So along those lines, as well as I really want to help reduce fear
Mm-hmm.
and the stigma around the dying process. And through that, I'm going to be doing some guided imagery. There's a guided meditation I have about, kind of experiencing your own death. And it's not as horrible as
Mm.
it sounds. It's very, very spiritual and meaningful. And so I want to start getting the process started of
Mm-hmm.
really thinking about death in a totally different way.
I
So
love
I will
that.
be looking at the dying process, about using creative arts therapies throughout, either with the dying person or with their loved ones. And creative arts, specifically as in art therapy, music therapy, drama therapy, used in a reminiscence and memory and dialoguing way.
Mm-hmm.
The guided imagery, letter writing, using the written word as a launching pad for other explorations. So it's going to be a very full 3 hours of, I never have enough time to do everything, because there's always so much conversation and discussion that
Yeah.
these activities produce, that it we are going to be very we are going to build our own community in this workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we will leave feeling like we have created a community, but also had a really spiritual experience. Um,
Sounds
and
amazing.
they are all always really very meaningful for everyone.
Yeah.
maybe emotional at times, but we create that space where it's safe and we can hold those feelings,
Mhm.
um, and express them
Mhm.
without feeling like we need to suppress them or ignore them. So
So
it's
important.
very rich. It's a very rich workshop.
It sounds like it. It sounds like you have so many things that you can really kind of pivot and move with your audience based on whoever's in the room of what they're really needing in terms of all the experientials that you have. And
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah.
There's always, I come in with a my list of agenda, and then this is the wonderful aspect of creative arts therapies. Once you get into the space, you throw it all out the window and you just go with what's there.
Mm, love that. Love that. Well, it sounds like people that attend are really going to learn a lot from you and walk away hopefully with a lot to take with them into their own personal lives, but also in their professional lives.
That is my hope and my wish for everyone.
Mm.
And of course, you get out of it what you put into it. So it's not, the responsibility isn't just on my side. The responsibility lies with all of us
Mhm.
for the experience that each person has.
Yeah, well, I think you're in the right conference for people that are like hungry to dive
Oh,
into the
yes,
experientials.
absolutely. Yes, I have enjoyed being part of the Expressive Therapy Summit for many years, and it's always just such a great experience for me. It's one of the
Mhm.
few conferences that I really make that effort to get a proposal into, because I really want to be around the people that attend and really
Mhm.
and support such a wonderful conference.
Yeah. It's a good time.
Indeed.
So, I want to know for the listeners, if they want to learn more about what you do, in addition to other things that you're offering outside of the summit presentation, where can they find you, Patricia?
The best way is to go to my website, and I do have a contact page at the end, and just go to www.onbrightwings, all one word.com, and go to the contact page and reach out to me. I will respond, and I will be so thrilled to hear from you.
Wonderful. And if if you're listening and are interested in attending Patricia's workshop at the summit, you just need to go to www.expressivetherapysummit.com and then you'll click on the LA event and then you'll be able to find her in the listing, but I'll put a link to it in the show notes as well.
Yes, I believe it's March 24th, which is a Sunday.
Nice. And it's a 3-hour workshop.
Yes,
It's going to be jam
yes.
packed.
Mm. Oh, that's my hope.
I'm sure it will be. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. And I really enjoyed our conversation and appreciate the work that you're doing. Uh, we need more people doing this kind of work so that we're not so scared of the end of our time here. And when those that we love depart and die, that it's not such a scary thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is my goal. To change that thinking.
I love that. Well, thank you so much.
And thank you, Raina. I really appreciate it. And just such a pleasure talking with you.
You as well. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Expressive Therapy Summit special series. Um, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation that I had with Patricia. I love how she has thought about ways to market that break through people's discomfort around talking about death and making it a more natural process by hosting different events to educate and allow people to have conversation. I just think that's such a wonderful way to serve the community. But through that act of service, people are finding her and making those connections that she's available to provide that the beautiful suite of services that she offers to her clients and their families. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed the conversation. And if this is a population that you're interested in working with, or maybe it's something that, is connecting to you in your stage of life, um, check out her session at the upcoming LA Summit. I am sure it's going to be fabulous. Just talking with her, it's evident what a wealth of wisdom she has on the topic and how passionate she is about the integration of the arts throughout all of it. And I'm sure people are going to walk away really enriched and edified from her workshop. And again, head over to the website there, which is www.expressivetherapysummit.com. And then you can find her session, which is Artful Dying, in the menu there of the schedule. If you just put that in, it should come up. But if you don't want to do that and you want to skip it, just head right into my show notes and I'll have the link there for you. All right, everyone, if you like what you hear, please remember it is so important to us if you rate, subscribe, give us feedback wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps the show become found by other people who are also passionate about the creative arts therapies. All right. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creative Psychotherapist. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For show notes, downloads, and additional resources, head over to the website at www.creativeclinicianscorner.com.